Welcome, everyone. You're joining us for a deep dive today. And this one was actually sparked by something you shared with us recently, Professor Joseph Ng's newsletter, Algorithms.
That's right. Yeah, Professor Ng, in a recent edition, he introduced this really well, fascinating term. He calls it synthetic syndrome.
Synthetic syndrome, okay.
Yeah, and so our plan today is really to unpack that idea, explore what it might mean for professionals, for you listening.
And we're not just looking at Professor Ng's work, right? We're pulling in some other perspectives, too.
Exactly. We've got some related pieces, one looking at AI imposter syndrome, and another that really digs into the differences between, let's say, human creativity and what AI produces.
Okay, good. So the mission is sort of weave these together, get a fuller picture of, well, how we work, how we feel about work with all this generative AI stuff happening.
Mhm.
All right, let's jump right in then. This synthetic syndrome from Professor Ng's newsletter. What's the core idea?
Well, basically, he defines it as this kind of creeping feeling. Diminished confidence, maybe. Yeah, it happens when we start comparing our own work, what we create, to what AI can churn out.
And it's not just the obvious, will I lose my job fear.
No, no, he's very clear about that in algorithms. It's
Yeah.
quieter, more personal, like a feeling of inadequacy setting in.
Right, that little voice. Could an AI have done this? Maybe better, faster.
Exactly. He uses a great example with ChatGPT 4.0, making art that looks like Studio Ghibli.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. It's kind of uncanny.
It is. And Professor Eng points out, it's not just technically good, it almost feels like it has, well, soulfulness, which is, pretty unsettling if you're a human artist who pours emotion and years of practice into your work.
Definitely unsettling.
And he stresses this isn't just for artists or creatives. He talks about designers seeing Mid-Journey create amazing graphics in, like, seconds.
Or writers seeing ChatGPT spit out ideas that feel, well, pretty close to their own thoughts.
Yeah. Or engineers, marketers,
Yeah.
AI writing code, drafting copy. Even leaders, he mentions, might start questioning their own experience when an AI can suggest these really effective data-backed decisions.
And that connects to something else from the newsletter that really jumped out at me, this idea of a hollowing out of pride in what we do.
The hollowing out.
That feeling that the work, the process you use to get satisfaction from now feels, I don't know, replicable.
Automated, disposable even.
Disposable, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like you failed. You might have even succeeded,
Yeah.
but you're left questioning the actual value of your effort.
That's a really crucial point Professor Eng makes. This doubt can stick around after you finish, after the project's a success. You're just wondering, does it mean as much now?
Because an AI could maybe do something similar.
Potentially, yeah. And he really highlights how this can slowly erode our self-confidence and that basic human need we have to find meaning in our work. It hits deep.
It really does. It makes you think, okay, is this synthetic syndrome that Professor Eng describes,
Yeah.
is it linked somehow to that other idea, the AI imposter syndrome we saw in that Agility PR Solutions piece?
Oh, that's a really interesting connection to make, yeah. So the Agility PR article, it talked about AI imposter syndrome as professionals feeling they need to kind of overstate how much they know about AI.
Right, just to seem like they're keeping up. Because AI is everywhere now.
Exactly. And their survey found it's happening at all levels. Even senior leaders feel this pressure. They feel swamped by AI talk and just don't want to look like they're behind.
Okay, so that's more of an external pressure, right? Appearing knowledgeable.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Whereas with synthetic syndrome, like Professor Eng outlines it in Algorithms, the doubt is much more internal. It's you questioning your own actual skills, your own contributions worth when you see what AI can do.
So could one feed the other? Like maybe feeling you have to pretend you know more AI stuff actually makes you feel worse when you see a really impressive AI output, making you more prone to synthetic syndrome.
That's a really sharp hypothesis. I think that's quite plausible. The anxiety from the imposter syndrome that need to project competence could definitely lower your internal defenses, maybe, make you more vulnerable to feeling inadequate when faced with AI's actual performance.
Like building up a slightly shaky front that gets easily cracked.
Yeah, something like that. Which then raises the big question. How do we hold on to genuine self-belief here?
It feels like we're juggling, trying to look like we've got it all figured out while inside we're maybe a bit shaky about where we stand. Reminds me of that WSJ article, the anecdote from Sam Schechner using ChatGPT.
Oh, right, where you said I was making him feel stupid?
Yeah, that was his word. He used it for things like writing emails in French, and he was impressed by how fluent it was, but
But he realized he wasn't doing the mental work himself anymore.
Exactly. He felt his own, like, cognitive agility was slipping because he was just outsourcing the task so easily.
And wow, that just loops right back to Professor Eng's idea in algorithms about confidence eroding, doesn't it?
Totally.
If the AI handles the heavy lifting, the stuff that used to stretch our brains, do we lose proficiency and maybe even lose faith in our own ability to do it? Does that make us more open to synthetic syndrome?
It's a bit worrying, the idea that we're not just delegating tasks, but maybe also the chance to practice and keep those skills sharp.
Yeah.
Now let's bring in that other piece, the one by Thomas Frey on human versus AI creativity. That offered a slightly different take, maybe a counterpoint.
It did, yeah. Frey really focused on the fundamental differences in how creation happens. He laid out a few key things like origin.
Origin.
Yeah, human creativity comes from our life experiences, emotions, thoughts, our inner world. AI creativity, it's algorithms and data. That's its source.
Okay, different starting points. What else?
Intentionality. Humans usually create with a purpose, right? A goal, an emotion to express. AI generates based on patterns it learn, but without conscious understanding of why.
No real why behind it.
Exactly.
Right.
Which leads to emotional connection. Our stuff is tangled up with our feelings. AI can mimic emotion in its output, sure, but it doesn't feel it. There's no intrinsic connection there.
Right. And originality.
Phrase suggests, true, paradigm-shifting originality is still largely a human thing. AI is amazing at recombining data in new ways, but groundbreaking leaps,
Yeah.
maybe less so. And then, of course, ethics built into us needs to be programmed into AI.
He had that comparison, James the human artist and Sylvia the AI artist.
Yeah, that was helpful. James's work has that depth, that purpose. Sylvia's might look good, technically sound, but it lacks that inherent feeling and intent.
Okay. But Frey also talked about AI as a tool, didn't he? Something to help human creativity.
Yes, absolutely. That was a big part of his point. Using AI for brainstorming, getting past creative blocks, maybe trying out styles you wouldn't normally think of. Augmenting us, not just replacing us.
So instead of just seeing it as competition, leverage it. Which brings up a really interesting question regarding Professor Eng's synthetic syndrome. Could focusing on those uniquely human parts, the emotion, the intent, the potential for real originality, could that be like an antidote?
That's a powerful thought. Yeah. If we consciously value those elements in our own work, maybe that helps push back against feeling diminished just because an AI made something that looks similar on the surface.
Focusing on the why and the how of our own process.
Exactly. Celebrating the human perspective, the journey, the intent stuff the AI just doesn't have.
Okay, this feels like a good bridge to that LinkedIn piece, How to Overcome Imposter Syndrome in AI. It was about imposter syndrome, but it feels like the strategies could really apply to synthetic syndrome too. Would you agree?
Well, absolutely. A lot of that advice on building confidence seems directly transferable to dealing with the feelings Professor Nang talks about in algorithms.
Like what specifically?
Well, things like really knowing your own strengths and weaknesses, focusing on your personal progress, not just constantly comparing yourself to AI, celebrating your wins, learning from mistakes.
Makes sense. And finding mentors or peers.
Yeah, that seems crucial. Having people to talk this stuff through with, share what you're feeling, get perspective, that could be huge for challenging those internal doubts that fuel synthetic syndrome.
Less isolating.
Definitely. And just keep learning. The AI field changes so fast. Embracing that, experimenting, expanding what you know, it builds skills, sure, but it also builds confidence, helps you feel more in control.
And reframing your thoughts, that internal voice.
Yeah, consciously catching that negative self-talk and replacing it with something more positive, more realistic. That's a powerful tool they mentioned.
And being kind to yourself through it all, acknowledging this is new and kind of weird for almost everyone.
Totally. Feeling like you don't know everything. That's normal right now. The article also mentioned practical things like tracking your successes, working on team projects, getting feedback, even teaching others what you do know.
All ways to sort of solidify your own sense of competence and value, even with AI in the picture.
Exactly. Reinforcing that your contribution matters. The people in that piece really stress that AI is new for most folks. It's okay not to have all the answers. The key is how you manage those feelings.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it feels like Professor Eng's synthetic syndrome from his Algorithms newsletter, it really puts a name to something important. This quiet, maybe widespread psychological fallout from AI becoming so capable.
Yeah, it really does. It's that undercurrent of feeling less confident, affecting all sorts of professionals as they see what AI can do compared to their own skills, their own creative work.
And it makes you wonder, listening to this, Does this resonate? Are you seeing this or maybe feeling hints of it in your own work?
That tension between AI's speed and efficiency and the satisfaction we get from human effort.
Yeah, or seeing AI's creative output and maybe questioning your own spark. And just that background hum of pressure to keep up, but also pressure to, keep believing in your own abilities.
It's clear AI has incredible potential,
Hmm.
but understanding these psychological impacts like the synthetic syndrome Professor Eng identifies is just vital. We need to figure out how to have a healthy relationship with this tech.
One where human skills, human creativity, our emotional input, where that stuff still feels valued, where we can still find real pride in what we do.
Mm-hmm. A sustainable path forward.
So definitely check out Professor Eng's A-gorithms newsletter if this got you thinking, and maybe revisit those other sources too. And perhaps think about those strategies for imposter syndrome. Could they be useful tools for navigating synthetic syndrome as well? Something to consider as we all try to adapt and hopefully thrive alongside these machines.